This is something I haven't done in a while. I am very conscious whenever I write of not just how it looks on paper, the grammar. I also look for the flow and how it sounds if it were in an audiobook. I look to capture the music, the rhythm, the pauses, and the only way to capture that is by reading it aloud. So I haven't done this in Stoner and Shadow, so here we go. Something wrong, princess? Otar jeered with rich vulgarity as Bergen relieved himself. And let me see here. Did they neglect to teach you an appreciation for men? Otar released another bout of laughter, and Kallan balled her fists. Otar, that's enough, Rune said against the trestle. The big brute swallowed mid-guffaw, and with resumed silence governed the side oar. Within a short while, the heavy clump of Bergen's boots confirmed his return, and in a torrent of billowed skirts... Billowed? Yes. Kallan rose to her feet. Slamming her shoulder into Bergen's, Kallan plodded to the front of the ship, paying no mind to the catcalls and jeers as she went. What did you do? Bergen asked, watching the wind whip Kallan's hair into the folds of her skirts as she came to stand near the ship's bow. I'm not sure, Rune stared, his brow still furrowed. Bergen's face stretched into a wide grin. You know how to pick 'em, don't you? Bergen said, shuffling his seat to the furs beside Rune. Exhaling, he dropped to the floor and leaned into the trestle. Why not let her go, brother? Bergen said, leaning in and dropping the amusement from his tone. She doesn't want to be here any more than she's wanted here. You could send an arrow to her back, or I could pluck her off tonight while she sleeps. She won't sleep, Rune said as he watched Kallan hug herself against the chill. And she has to come with us. Well, of course she has to come with us, Bergen scoffed dismissively. But why take a bothersome prisoner to kill her on ceremony when we could just kill her here? It'll boost the men's spirits! Rune kept his eyes fixed on the four, guarding to ensure none of his men stepped out of the line. Rune kept his eye fixed on the four, guarding to ensure none of his men stepped out of line. There are greater enemies out there with greater happenings than any of us are aware of, Rune said. What am I? And unless we combine our four efforts, Rune tore his gaze from Kallan, we will never see the end of this conflict. Dun, 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 dun. This was at a time period where I like to insert taglines in the center of a sentence. Okay. There are greater enemies out there with greater happenings than any of us are aware of, Rune said, and unless we combine our efforts, we will never see the end of this conflict. Rune tore his gaze from Kallan. Bergen leaned closer, eager for the moment to speak privately. I know you, he said with a darkened look to his eye. You don't go gallivanting after wenches, Bergen added a subtle nod toward the front of the ship where Kallan stood. What goes on, brother? Rune shook his head. I don't know. Not yet. The least you could have done is let her sail with Gunnar, Bergen said. He hates everyone equally, unless they're a horse. Without a second look to his brother, Rune made his way to the bow, stepping over men who slept and sulked, stretched out on the deck. Grabbing the mainstay to keep his balance against the jostling ship, Rune came to stand beside Kallan and stared into the cold winds, grateful for the whistling that drowned out most of the comments behind her. And that's something she won't know. She stared ahead, refusing to acknowledge his presence, the wind drawing the bite of her She stared ahead, refusing to acknowledge his presence, the wind drawing the bite of tears from her eyes. Okay, and all of that is in Kallan's point of view. And it should be in Rune's. You can cry if you must. Kallan turned, glaring at Rune from his words. I can see it. You're trying too hard to keep your head together. Kallan permitted a scoff and gazed back to the waters ahead where the boat's stern cut into the water surface. Alright. Pushing its way. Okay, waters, too redundant. The spray of the sea added to the chill. You're as stubborn as ever. You won't even permit yourself a shiver despite the ruthless winds of this air. Rune noted the subtle rise of her chin, as if defying the winds as much as him. They mean no harm, really. Rune tried again, gentler this time. Don't they? She said, gazing back at Rune with reddened eyes. Rune followed the pale curve of her cheek to her ear and down the lines of her neck. The only movement was of her hair whipping wildly about by the wind. With a sigh, Rune looked back to the river. Men aren't as temperate as women, he said. We like our comforts and get cross when we lose them. You think you can take me? Force my hand, my presence, and hide behind the call of guest. You are guest, Rune said. I am your prisoner, Kallan said. No matter what title you give me, I'm not free to return to my people. You're not wearing shackles, your highness. You're not at the mercy of my men. You send me home. she almost begged. I can't do that, Princess, Rune said. And why not? Don't have the ego to spare? Rune sighed as Kallan restored her venom. If I let you go, Bergen won't let you live. He would be more than willing to heed the hunt. He would be more than willing to lead the hunt. Kallan scoffed as if dismissing Rune's warning. He would find you, bind you, and if he felt merciful, he would let his men only kill you. So what then, Kallan said. You claim to keep me safe by keeping me here with them? Not then, Princess, Rune said. Me. You name any instant within the last moon that I have ever harmed you, and I'll set you free at the first sign of nightfall. No? Didn't think so. He waited for her to answer. When she didn't, he looked back to Kallan, who stared, still idle, still unmoving, distant and dead to the world around her. His jaw tightened as she withdrew, back into the black chasms of her mind where she harbored the remnants of her iron wall. Without a word, Rune trudged back to the stern and dropped himself back to the pile of furs, ignoring the banter of laughs exchanged between Bergen and his men. At the bow, Kallan stood, giving no sign that she lived or was aware of her surroundings, as she sank back into the vacant depths of her mind. That all needs to be converted to Kallan's point of view. I think it'll be more effective than Rune's. Okay?